I'd like to work again, but I'd never been a guy who would sell his soul to get, money and fame.
That one line, just one line from one of Hollywood's most respected actors, delivered without anger, without desperation, just the calm certainty of someone who already knows what he sacrificed and what he refused to bow to. A film pulls in $250 million at the box office, and the mainstream media acts like it never happened. No reviews, no morning show invites, no late night spots, nothing. Ask yourself, when has a $251 million movie ever been treated like that? It hasn't. Not until now.
We are headed into the storm of all storms. Yes. The storm is upon us.
And now, Keanu Reeves is stepping straight into that same storm. Mark Wahlberg is watching both situations closely. And based on what's quietly building behind the scenes in Hollywood, the system is getting ready to react. But here's what most people aren't connecting with. Two names. Two completely different careers, two totally different public images. Yet right now, inside Hollywood's inner circles, those names are being mentioned together and not in a positive way. Caviezel Keanu Reeves. One is a deeply outspoken Catholic who just delivered the highest grossing independent film in recent American history, a film Hollywood seemed determined to suffocate before it could breathe. The other? The internet's favorite celebrity, a guy so widely liked that even critics struggle to say anything negative about him. And ironically, that might be exactly what makes him a threat. Then you've got Mark Wahlberg slightly in the background, watching, calculating, and slowly beginning to speak up. Now, before we go further, let's get one thing clear. This isn't about conspiracy theories. This isn't built on fake quotes or shaky claims. This is about patterns, about timing, about how Hollywood, as a system, reacts when someone inside it stops following the script. And right now, two major figures have stepped outside those lines at the same time. That's never really happened before, and Hollywood doesn't look ready for it. Let's start with Caviezel, because his story lays the foundation. Once you understand what happened to him, what's now happening around Keanu Reeves starts to feel a lot more real. Caviezel didn't suddenly become a target. It was gradual, intentional, and it began long before Sound of Freedom ever reached theaters. Most people remember him from The Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson's 2004 film A Movie. Hollywood also tried to shut down before it exploded into one of the highest grossing films ever. That alone should have been a warning sign. Caviezel had already shown he was willing to attach himself to projects. The industry didn't like projects carrying messages gatekeepers didn't want amplified. But here's where things get interesting. After The Passion, his career went quiet. Not messy, not scandal-driven, just quiet. Strangely quiet for an actor of his level. No controversies, no reports of being difficult. He was simply available. And Hollywood just stopped calling.
About 4 years ago, we showed a movie. This has been a 5-year deal, and they've done everything they could to stop it, as they did this with Passion of the Christ.
5 years, that's how long it took Sound of Freedom to move from production into theaters. And according to Caviezel, the film faced a long and complicated journey during that time, including delays and challenges typically associated with independent distribution and studio processes. The movie is based on the issue of child trafficking, drawing inspiration from real-world cases that have been documented and widely discussed. And that's exactly why it sparks so much conversation, because when you look at it, a film centered on such a serious and universally condemned crime would normally be expected to receive strong industry attention, or at least broad promotional support. In many cases, projects like this are positioned for awareness campaigns or highlighted during awards conversation. But in this situation, the film followed a different path. Instead of a traditional studio-driven rollout, it moved through independent channels and faced mixed reactions along the way, ranging from strong public support to criticism and debate over its presentation and messaging. That contrast is what made the release stand out. Why did a film on such an important subject generate such divided responses within the entertainment space? The answers vary depending on who you ask. Some point to distribution challenges, others to differences in creative perspective and marketing approach. Despite the obstacles and lack of conventional studio backing, the film still went on to perform strongly at the box office, earning over $250 million worldwide. And that result added another layer to the discussion, showing there was a significant audience interest in the story, regardless of how it was positioned by major industry players. In the end, Sound of Freedom became more than just a film release. It turned into a broader conversation about independent filmmaking, audience demand, and how socially focused stories are received in today's entertainment landscape.
It's an 8-armed octopus, and if you take just trafficking out, that arm will grow back. You have to take the head.
That's not how an actor promotes a film. That sounds like someone who genuinely believes they've identified a deeper system, something bigger than isolated crimes. And once Caviezel started taking that message onto major platforms, Steve Bannon's War Room, Jordan Peterson's podcast, the Trinity Broadcasting Network, the reaction shifted. It stopped being passive. It became focused, targeted. And the first hit wasn't even Caviezel. It was the man beside him. Tim Ballard, the real-life inspiration behind Sound of Freedom, a former DHS agent, founder of Operation Underground Railroad, a man who spent years doing real, documented work rescuing children from trafficking networks. Not a commentator, not a theorist. Someone operating in the field with first-hand knowledge of how these systems function. Someone with evidence backing what Caviezel was saying publicly. That combination, Caviezel's voice and Ballard's experience, may have been too much. So the system reacted.
The behavior of Tim Ballard crossed the line, and these women cannot remain silent.
In July 2023, right as Sound of Freedom was dominating the box office, Tim Ballard was removed as CEO of the very organization he founded. The process was fast. Allegations surfaced. An independent law firm stepped in. Conclusions were reached quickly. And then later, prosecutors quietly declined to press charges. No trial, no courtroom, no resolution, just a reputation collapse right at the peak of public attention. And then, silence.
I would not throw myself in the way of the enemy that's going to remain my children, and my own 3 children, that I love my life so much.
This is the part people keep overlooking. The allegations didn't hold. The case didn't move forward. But maybe that was never the objective. The real goal? Disruption. Killing momentum at the exact moment it became dangerous. The film's director, Alejandro Monteverde, saw everything unfold and responded the only way he could, by stepping back. He gave interviews stressing that the film wasn't tied to conspiracy narratives, that it had been written years earlier, that the controversy made him uneasy, so much so that his instinct was to distance himself entirely.
Yeah. You know, it is such a sensitive subject matter that it's very important that the film or this dialogue doesn't get labeled politically. This is a film that should unite.
Think about that. A director whose film made over $250 million without Hollywood's backing, publicly creating space between himself and his lead actor, and the conversation surrounding the film. That tells you everything about the environment they're operating in. That tells you how real the pressure is, because in Hollywood, relationships are everything. Your access to studios, to funding, to distribution depends on whether the right people still answer your calls. And once the system labels you a problem, those calls stop. Now, here's where things take a turn most people haven't fully clocked yet. Mark Wahlberg has been watching all of this. And Wahlberg isn't Caviezel. He's not loud about it. He's not jumping on podcasts breaking down elite network. He's something else entirely, a survivor of Hollywood. Someone who climbed through one of the toughest systems in entertainment, rebuilt his image, and held his spot at the top for decades. That doesn't happen by accident. That's someone who understands the rules. So when Mark Wahlberg calls Hollywood a monster, not joking, not metaphorically, that carries weight. That's coming from someone who's lived inside it for 30 years. That's not a casual comment. That's someone who's seen enough to say something, even if it's only partial. And here's the key part. Wahlberg is one of the few people with enough influence and credibility to say something like that and not be instantly shut out. He's too established, too connected, too outspoken about his faith, and too close to projects orbiting Sound of Freedom to pretend he doesn't see what's unfolding.
Your faith means so much to you. Have you always talked about it? Or did you feel at some point like, okay, I have a platform here and I just want to share this part of my journey?
I have. It's a balance. I don't want to jam it down anybody's throat, but I do not deny
my faith. In 2024, Hollywood, where openly Christian figures are often sidelined, where studios mass-produce anti-religious content while treating genuine Christianity like a PR risk, that statement hits hard. That's not casual talk, that's a stance. And now Wahlberg is doing something that's clearly making the industry uneasy. He's teaming up again with Mel Gibson. Now pause for a second, because Mel Gibson's story is basically the original blueprint. Before Caviezel, before Ballad, before Sound of Freedom, there was Gibson. Back in 2004, he made The Passion of the Christ, despite almost everyone in Hollywood warning him not to. No major studio wanted it. It was labeled controversial before anyone even saw it. The backlash started before filming was done. Then it hit theaters and made $612 million on a $30 million budget, becoming one of the most impactful films of its time. And what happened next? Hollywood made sure Gibson's personal mistakes stayed front and center. Every controversy, every flaw magnified, repeated, and used to slowly push him out of the spaces he once dominated. But here's what rarely gets mentioned. He never stopped working. He kept directing. He kept producing. Then came Hacksaw Ridge, which earned him an Oscar nomination and made things uncomfortable for the industry because they couldn't just dismiss it. Now he's back in the spotlight, teaming up with Wahlberg on Flight Risk. And Hollywood is watching that partnership with a kind of tension you only see when people feel threatened. Because right now, this isn't just another movie. With the Epstein documents circulating, with Sound of Freedom still echoing culturally, with Caviezel's words still sticking in people's minds, a Gibson-Wahlberg project feels like something bigger. It's two men who've already been pushed aside, choosing to work together anyway and refusing to act like the past few years didn't happen. And that brings us to what might be the most unexpected piece of this whole situation, the one Hollywood probably didn't see coming. Keanu Reeves. Here's what people often overlook about Keanu. He's never truly depended on Hollywood's approval. Not really. When Fox Studios sidelined him for nearly a decade after he turned down Speed 2, he didn't beg to get back in. He didn't apologize. He didn't grab whatever project came his way. He waited. He stuck to what felt right. And eventually, with The Matrix, he came back bigger than ever on his own terms. 10 years of being pushed aside simply because he refused a sequel he didn't believe in. And he made it through not by playing along, but by refusing to. That kind of independence, it makes power structures nervous. Because Hollywood runs on one core assumption, everyone has a price. Everyone has a weakness. Everyone can be pressured, exposed, or controlled. That's the system. And Keanu Reeves has spent decades quietly proving that assumption wrong. He gave away chunks of his Matrix earnings so the VFX teams could get bonuses, took pay cuts so co-stars could be paid fairly. He rides the subway, sits on park benches, shares food with strangers. None of it feels staged. That's just who he is. And in an industry built on leverage, on knowing what people want, fear, or will compromise, for a man who genuinely doesn't care about status becomes untouchable, not just admirable, dangerous. Because authenticity in Hollywood isn't rewarded, it disrupts a system built on control. Now Keanu is speaking out about something very specific, something technical on the surface, but deeper if you really think about it. He's become one of the most vocal critics of deepfake tech and unauthorized CGI manipulation. At first glance, it sounds like a standard concern, an actor protecting his image. But look closer at the timing. Look at the bigger picture. In a world where narratives are already tightly controlled, where reputations can be shaped or destroyed, what happens when technology can literally put words, emotions, and actions into someone's body without their consent? A tear he never cried, an expression he never made, a performance he never chose, and he's expected to just sign off on that? Forever? Now take that further. If a studio can digitally add something as small as a tear, what else can be created? False confessions? Fabricated statements? Entire moments that never happened? This isn't some far-off scenario. The tech already exists, and Keanu Reeves is one of the few figures with the credibility and the courage to call it out directly. He's not just talking about movies, he's pointing at control over image, over narrative, over what the public believes. And when one of the most trusted faces in Hollywood says, "This isn't right, I won't be part of it," that lands differently. That's not brand protection. That's disruption. And now, everything we've been talking about, Caviezel, Wahlberg, Gibson, Reeves, Sound of Freedom, deepfakes, blacklisting, it all starts to converge around one name, Jeffrey Epstein.
Third time talking in this one particular spot. And I'm thinking, what, did we do something wrong or something? But so then one more time it happened. At the end, I was asking about the movie, and I asked him about that one particular part where everybody's talking, and they all cried out Epstein Island. And I went, oh, okay. Now I understand what we're up against.
Now I understand what we're up against. That wasn't a journalist, not a political analyst, not some online theorist. That was a regular audience, people watching Sound of Freedom, spontaneously shouting the same name during the same moment in the film. Epstein. And here's the part that still hasn't fully sunk in. For most people, the story didn't end in that New York jail cell in 2019. The network didn't just vanish. The client list didn't disappear. The connections, the leverage, the years of sensitive information tied to powerful figures across politics, media, finance, and entertainment, none of that simply evaporated. In 2026, the Department of Justice moved forward with a massive disclosure, millions of pages tied to Epstein. Court files, communications, investigative records, material that had been sealed or hidden for years. Epstein Island isn't the only island out there. Let that sit. The man behind the highest-grossing independent film on child trafficking, who worked closely with real-world operators, is saying clearly that Epstein wasn't an isolated case. The island wasn't unique. The system behind it, still there, still active. And Hollywood, the same industry shaping global narratives, deciding what gets attention and what gets buried, is deeply connected to that world. And it's disgusting that the media hasn't covered it properly. But why would they? The same corporations that own media outlets also control film studios. The same groups decide what gets produced, promoted, reviewed, or ignored completely. The same system that looked at a $251 million success and chose to act like it didn't exist. Caviezel is openly Catholic. His biggest roles, The Passion of the Christ, Sound of Freedom, carry clear spiritual themes. Wahlberg has said his faith reshaped his life and guides his career choices. Gibson built some of the most successful faith-based films ever, despite pushback every time.
I don't want to jam it down anybody's throat, but I do not deny my faith.
You know, I think it'll continue to open people's eyes.
I do not deny my faith. Simple words. But in Hollywood, they carry weight. Because Christian-focused content is often underfunded, underpromoted, and overlooked, even though it consistently performs when it reaches audiences. Sound of Freedom wasn't a flop, it was a phenomenon. The Passion of the Christ? A phenomenon. Hacksaw Ridge? Same story. Every time a faith-driven film gets past the gatekeeping, audiences show up. Which tells you something important: the resistance isn't about money. It's not about demand, it's about control, about who gets to tell stories and which messages are allowed to spread. And clearly, a Hollywood where Christian creators freely reach their audience without resistance isn't something the system is comfortable with. This is Caviezel operating on two levels at once, spiritual and strategic. He's not speaking in vague ideas, he's describing a mechanism. A system where control over stories, images, and narratives shapes what people accept as normal. Now step back and look at everything together. Caviezel makes a film about child trafficking. It gets delayed for 5 years. Hollywood ignores it. It still makes $251 million. That's not random, that's a pattern. And the story isn't finished yet. The Epstein files are still being processed. More information is expected. And Hollywood, despite all its influence, all its reach, all its ability to shape perception, can't fully control what's already in motion. The machine is loud,